But Chris is actually still in bed, so I'm gonna get this out real quick. So, somebody was talking about how, I guess, someone's doing a study and guys who really want to not be shit to women that they date are finding this confusing. But all the stuff that they're saying is the same level of crap that women already deal with. Also, it shouldn't be so confusing. You learn everybody's individual boundaries. Yes. Some women, they want you to ask every time that, you touch something and not just assume that having sex with them means that you can just touch them anywhere, anytime. Me and Jean, we hashed out our boundaries a long time ago. So we can do things like do certain types of jokes on one another, but like, if I strand him in the kitchen with no clothes when Chris isn't home, I know where the washer and dryer are. And we have small ones, so there's usually something in there. And if you really needed to walk across, or it distressed him, I'd just point the camera down. I mean, it's not malicious, and he knows that. And he was laughing too. So, but that's about personal boundaries. You just learn each other's, and he wouldn't do that with just anyone, and I wouldn't do that with just anyone. So it's also something that, you have to have a sort of personal intimacy for. And then, even then, he never assumes that he can just do whatever anyway. He's not into implied consent, which literally is consent without consent. It's all it is. It's basically, I'm just gonna assume that you consent to this without asking. Or without making sure. Like, ask, is this okay? That's all, you know? And yes, it can be confusing. Women have to deal with the same damn thing. There are so many different guys out there who have different standards. You just have to find the one, that you guys can find that middle ground. You know, there's a reason why most women are told marry your best friend. You can't trust your best friend. There's no one. So, oftentimes people even trust their best friends more than they do their own family. My hair is getting oily and nasty. Need to wash it. But I don't want to wash it too soon because my actual hair is also dry and nasty. Actually, it might not even be that it's oily per se. It's just damaged, and my scalp is weird. So I'll probably put some conditioner in it, leave it in for the day, and then deal with it later. If Chris is good this week, we've got a family trip planned for Thursday. That's good, because he's got spring break. Which also means I'm not really going anywhere. So the family trip will be after my graduation at the studio. And next week, around midweek, I will be able to attend a more advanced studio that also helps you market your work. Yeah. So, things are moving. I also have to call and make sure that some paperwork went through. Me starting that job got delayed because some paperwork didn't go through. Because the company requires extra paperwork. Because they only hire people with disabilities or who are bilingual. Specifically bilingual. Like, sign language doesn't count, apparently. So the fact I know how to use like a TTY and shit doesn't matter. The fact I understand deaf culture also doesn't matter. Well, as much as anyone who isn't deaf themselves can. I took my classes pretty seriously in that regard, and I actually enjoy learning about culture. So, anyway, it actually kind of offends me that people don't tend to think that sign language or deaf culture matter. Because once you understand it, you're kind of like, wow, this is kind of nice and even understandable. Like, the worst thing that you can say to someone who's deaf, this is like the worst thing as far as like culturally is to basically their sign. I don't even want to do it because it is so bad. But there's a history there where people who were deaf used to be called deaf and dumb. You don't do that at all. And there's a sign that insinuates that you have zero brains. There's just so much. It is like the ultimate thing that you don't do. And I realize that for a lot of people, that might seem less than it is, but it's not. Never. Never, 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 never. It's like, um, you know what? There aren't very many things that I can comparatively say that would be understood across cultures. But it's bad. Really bad. So don't do it. But yeah, understanding that there's things in hearing culture that are offensive in deaf culture. Apparently, like, that's. I mean, there's even things that would be rude in hearing culture that aren't in deaf culture. In fact, it's considered impolite to do them. So, there's actually a lot of difference there. I always thought that it was interesting, but knowing that hasn't really helped me out in the real world. I mean, they call everything beyond like school the real world. It's really just all one big meshed up, screwed up world. But it hasn't helped. In fact, I find most companies give no fucks that I know any of this. The only thing they care about is whether or not I know Spanish. And back in high school, there was no room in those classes for me. There were literally people in those classes who already knew Spanish, but who were just looking for an easy grade. There wasn't enough spaces in the class. There was a waiting list for the class. And then, like, beyond first, it was just... And then, it's the wrong kind of Spanish anyway, because it's the Spanish from Spain, not, Mexican Spanish or Spanglish, or the kind of Spanish that has developed here, because this has been going on a while. Yeah. Also, looking at the logistics, I really don't think a wall would help. We need to do something about the criminals that come over, and rape people or hurt them otherwise, but we don't. The wall would just. It's. How do I put this? Super expensive And literally, it would tear apart communities and apparently go through some people's homes. So there are people who literally live on the border, like in Mexico and America, their houses. And then there's nature preserve. It would literally like destroy people's lives in the environment. Um and it's just, would it really keep them out? That's the thing. And there are a lot of people who have pointed out that we have a lot more immigrants here who are illegal because they can't leave unless it's deportation. Like, there used to be like a revolving door. Now, like, people get stuck here because it's easier to stay and than it is to leave and come back. Like, it's not even safe to leave. um, and that's a good point. Because it's not. It's not even easy for people who are born here to leave unless they have buku money. Most people do not have buku money. If you live on a border and you have family there and a passport and all that, it can be. You know, because then you've basically got some place on either side. But traveling can be expensive. And most people don't have it. I mean, we know some people who moved down here and basically lost everything to do it. Traveling is expensive, as is moving. Yeah. I don't know what to say. My body hates me. I'm getting better as far as being sick goes, but cramps are epic and bad, and bleeding, ow, is heavy. Ow. As bad as I have it, though, there are actually women who have it worse. This is me after Midol. A couple hours after Midol. My cramps can get so bad that if it's not a nightmare that wakes me up, my cramps can wake me up. Just with the pain. I mean, it literally feels like my uterus is trying to rip itself out of my body. As far as that goes. It's pretty bad. Like, claw its way out. That's what kind of pain it is. No, it is not actually trying to claw its way out or rip itself out of my body. Just the lining. But that's how periods work. That's how they work. So everybody goes through that. Not everybody gets that kind of pain though. Some people just get it's still kind of like being kicked in the balls repeatedly. Just saying. So, but there was a girl I knew growing up. Whenever she got her period, like her mom flat out, straight up had to call her out of school. Because it would make her physically ill. Like, she had trouble keeping down food. Everything. The whole 9 yards. It wasn't just cramps. It was everything about it was just so horrible for her that she became violently ill throughout the entire fucking thing. I mean, I just couldn't do that. No, to be fair, whenever mine gets particularly bad and the lining starts ripping off too quickly, because I actually have problems though. Like, my lining builds up more and thicker than it's supposed to, and my periods last longer. Like, I had that stint where basically I was bleeding for 4 years. I'm not joking. Right now I'm hoping that we're not going back to that, because It's been okay for a few months, as far as that goes. Not continuous, still bad, still a little bit longer than it's supposed to be, but enough, just enough to give my body some time to recover. But yeah. The fleshy clots, I'm not counting the other clots, are still bigger and more than your uterus is even supposed to get. So that worries me, but I can't really do anything about it. So it's still building up more than it should, and it's still ripping off, and it still hurts. Like, it's ripping off. Just picture, like, your own flesh ripping off slowly, like a band-aid. Someone's just, like, no, like Scotch tape. Someone's ripping it off slowly. That's what it does. It's actually supposed to, though, break down and not just rip off like that. But whenever you have your lining built up more, yeah, that can happen, and it hurts. It hurts. It hurts like a... That's what I go through. So, it all depends. It really does. It depends on the woman, really. Kind of like personal boundaries. Like Gene and I established a long time ago, I'm really not comfortable with having these big fleshy clot things coming out of me and then, doing that. I don't mind, though, helping him with his problem, but, like, it also depends on how bad the cramps are. 'Cause, there's a point where all I want to do is curl up in a ball, and I don't really feel like dealing with that. Like, you feel enough like shit, you don't want to, because you feel like shit. And that's movement. It's just not necessary for your day. You just sort of do what you need to do, and you don't do anything else. It's like an extra thing, and it's just not gonna happen. I need to blow my nose soon. But that's getting better, at least. The cramps not so much. I've actually reached the point where they're bad enough that it actually affects my stomach. So this one is actually one of the worst ones. But there are women who have worse. Like, I've not become violently ill. Just, it's hell to deal with. But, for most women, a period is not pleasant. Generally, you just feel like eating chocolate and curling up into a ball and just not dealing with people. But you have to anyway. And besides that, you kind of have to, even then, you want to deal with certain people to an extent. Human beings are social creatures. You cannot live in total isolation. It would literally drive you insane if you had no human contact whatsoever. It's part of the reason why I've had some doctors surprised I'm not insane. Not just because of my old blogs on another channel that was hacked a while back, like years and years ago, trying to get attention to something that was going on. But I was also talking about the past too, so it was like a weird combination of things, and it would have been hell to try and explain to anybody. So anyway, it's not like that. It's more like, I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore. I've actually been told it's a miracle I'm not crazy, basically. Because of some of the stuff I've been through, and the fact that I've essentially had my mind broken several times. Like, not in the sense, like, broken like some people would be comatose for the rest of their life, broken. But like the core that was me managed to survive, but you know, I suffered a lot of shit in the meantime. So I had things like memory loss and stuff like that. That's something I went through growing up. It was horrible. Like I couldn't remember who I was. I literally only remembered because my grandmother said so. But it was also combined with physical trauma too. So like I also legitimately had like, concussions and shit. But it was also the stuff that was being done to me too. So it might have been combined factors, it might not have been. Concussions on their own aren't supposed to do that. And I got lucky. I don't have a bunch of scarring on my brain. So, not that they can tell anyway. So, I didn't retain any like permanent damage from the concussions, which is good. Cause yeah, that's considered pretty lucky, especially with how many I had. And plenty of these went into my records. It's just most of them didn't. Sort of. Like, by the time I'd get to a doctor, it would be like a week later. And they'd be like, oh, you have a minor concussion. And I'm like, yeah, it's been a week. My head hit like 6 different things on the way down. Sometimes it would be longer than that. Yep, still sinus infection. But it's starting to clear up, so I'm just gonna keep taking care of it and, hope it doesn't come back kicking and screaming, so to speak. Anyway, I guess, But the reason why it's not just the medications or the beatings or the things that my grandmother did to me. It's also the level of isolation I went through. I literally had no idea how to approach any sort of social setting. Like, purely social. Because in 10 years, like, there wasn't very many times I was even allowed. And after a certain point, there were none. And then suddenly, I was expected to just know this stuff. In my later teenage years, and I had no clue what to do. And I was telling people, I don't know what to do. And nobody would understand. I even had a teacher who was like, no, there's no way you don't know what to do. Every kid has been in these situations. And I'm like, no. I have no... Like, I was just beginning to even be able to say, I have, no reason to know what to do. I was kept so isolated that, like, even though I had some form of human contact, and, I went to school and stuff, I mean, I'm pretty sure that it's the only reason I didn't go insane, despite the fact that, while I loved learning, I hated school. I still love learning. I still don't remember school fondly. Especially not after a certain point. It was a place where I was singled out for all the wrong reasons. And even a school that knew me as a genius before that very easily slipped into calling me slow on medications. As if there was something inherently wrong with me that made me that way. And I was quite literally medicated stupid. Then I was kept very isolated. School didn't really, I guess, help for the most part with that. I mean, it was human contact, I guess, but it's not like I had a ton of friends. Mostly, by the time, I mean, in my younger years, I wasn't allowed to do anything. My grandmother literally decided I was not allowed to have friends outside of school. The only time that changed was after a couple teachers, like, there was literally a room full of these teachers saying, you know what? She is so completely isolated. We're actually seeing delays here. Either let her have friends and, not isolate her, or we're getting, like, the state involved here. We're just gonna call CPS. Not that they ever did anything, because they were actually called, I know now. But it was pretty extreme as far as that goes. I mean, you have to go to pretty extreme measures to isolate a child that badly. And it has to be on purpose, too. This isn't something that you do on accident. And this isn't something that I wanted either. This isn't like where, like, Chris goes next door and invites his friends over. This is, my grandmother very pointedly just didn't allow me whenever I was invited, or, didn't even, like, my phone calls were more limited than prison. And I didn't even know that till I was a lot older. I complained about only being able to talk on the phone 15 minutes a day. About how, like, there was nothing my grandmother couldn't take from me. And, I actually had a teacher say, well, kids can't legally own anything. That's not true. And stealing from them is bad. We may have Chris put his things out in the hallway, if, or, take something if he's gonna hurt himself with it or somebody else. But we don't do the level of crap my grandmother did to me. And nobody should. I mean, I'd tell her no. And she'd, like, escalate the situation. I know that's what it is now. And often what I told her no on was completely reasonable, and I stand by that to this day. I am 29 years old. And I stand by that. These were some pretty reasonable things that I said no to. Like, no reasonable person would have ever agreed. I wouldn't agree to those things now. And I didn't do it like, no, I absolutely will not, you fucking bitch. I did it, no. Like, as respectful as possible. And I put a lot of effort into respectfully telling my grandmother no. Or, trying to, like, say, well, what if we do this instead? I was trying very much to handle my grandmother with as gentle a hand as possible, always. It never worked. And it usually ended up with her doing or saying things she knew would set me off. And setting me off now and setting me off then is different, of course, because I was a kid. Children, they react differently than adults. Now I'll just go type on the computer, or draw a picture or something. And back then I would do those things too. But also, in the moment, your emotions are more volatile as a kid. So, like, you keep on screaming this shit at me, I'm gonna end up screaming back, sort of thing. And I did. I'm not proud of it. But the things my grandmother screamed at me, most adults would yell back. I know that now. I've actually talked to some adults who said that they would have smacked her. I'm like, well, I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted her to stop. I just wanted her to stop. And I was confused more than anything. Because some of the things that she said were so off the wall, so far out of reality. It was like my grandmother tried to like reforge reality or how we saw reality. And my mom, she attacked a very sensitive subject who could no longer defend herself, who also happened to be my mother. The funniest thing is that my aunt has actually said a lot worse to me, simply because I speak the truth about how grandmother was to me and how living with her was. Um, so I can honestly say my aunt is literally no better than I was as a child handling that crap. And what my grandmother was saying was actually lies. Because, I lived with my mom, and that didn't happen. That's not what happened. My mom was not sleeping with a different guy every night. Most nights, she didn't even have a guy in her bed. My mom went out once a week. Usually, she brought home the same guys. Generally speaking, they were friends with benefits. Like, and we weren't even supposed to know that this was going on. I mean, we did, but, like, mom didn't have them, like, meet us and stuff. She didn't do that. They weren't doing that. They weren't like, oh, I'm your uncle or anything like that. Kind of like that one where the guy says, and don't tell our children, because, the wife's cheating and all that. Kind of like that joke thing. I really hope that's a joke. Or he's like, and don't tell our kids that you're their uncle. They're kids, not retarded. I don't like the word retarded because it literally means slow. And I've met some really intelligent people that are considered retarded. Slow does not mean that they aren't willing to put in the effort to learn those things anyway and even become better at them than most people. I've met people who are supposed to be slow who know more about certain things than I do because they've put in the time and effort to learn them. That's all it means. It just means that somebody's slow. They don't learn as quickly. I learn quickly. But then I'm also aware I could be more advanced than I am. Than I should be. But because of what happened, I've had to catch up on my own. And I've also taken some things further and learned them just because. Because I can and I want to. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm going to finish getting ready for the day. I'm gonna get Chris up in another 30 minutes or so. It's almost 8:30. Let him sleep till 9 and go drink some coffee. I've actually been up since 6. So, yeah. I'm really tired. Alright. But I can't go back to sleep because I need to get him up in 30 minutes. Alright. Alright, so this is... Oh, yeah. Some of those books are jeans. So, anyway. we have a lot of books. We have... I made the 2 bookcases in the bedroom. They're not made to be pretty. The one that we had downstairs was eventually, we got rid of it. The one that I made down there because it wasn't space effective. And then we have one that a friend gave us downstairs, and we kind of just have books where people normally keep their movies. I mean, we have one that I guess we have half of it has movies in it. But the other half is still books. We have a lot of books. But we actually have even more digitally. So, like, as many books as we have, we have a lot more. So, we like to read. We are book people. So, anyway, I'm gonna end this now. This is Luna, signing off. And I hope you have a wonderful and blessed day. Bye.